All right, here we go. It's a
Let you start rapping.
Here we go. I did a little.
Man, I was like, yes, we are ready to rock today.
I did a little dance warm up, so I think I'm in the mood. I was. You ever heard of Sugar Hill Gang?
Yes, or Sugar Hill Gang.
Yeah, they had Rapper's Delight was their big hit, but I had on Apache this morning, which was one of their deep in their catalog.
Yeah, when you got going with like here we go, I pictured you like doing like a rap, but like with like a jumpsuit on with no undershirt.
Yeah, that was it Chris Cross? Here we go.
We go. I was like, well, that's like this this last weekend at Hayden's hockey tournament. Saturday night, everybody got together and ordered pizza in like a conference room in the hotel, and all the boys, like 20 of them, they just play knee hockey and they just mess around. And anyway, they all started taking their shirts off, and like we came and Hayden. He was wearing his like hockey jumpsuit that he wears to the rink, and he goes,
Kid and play?
What's that?
Kid and play.
Yeah, that's what he's gonna play. And he goes and he does it. He like I look over. He takes his jacket off. He takes his sweatshirt. Or he takes his shirt off. So he's shirts. Then he puts his jacket back on, and I was like, and just starts playing. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you probably can't even take your jacket off right now because it's so sweaty. It's like stuck to your body. He reminded me, and this is what I pictured you when you started doing like your pre-podcast rap. He looked like Ben Affleck's brother in like Good Will Hunting. Like that's what he looked like. He looked like one of those old school Boston guys with like the no shirt. We got like the gold chain going on. I was like, man, you're setting a precedent right now. That's how I pictured you when you were breaking out like the rap. Maybe not like the jumpsuit, but more like the dude in Rounders. Remember his name? You know what I'm talking about? More of like the PJ sweatpant vibe with no, with the pants on and the jumpsuit top, but no, he was in Con Air. What was that guy's name?
I can't remember, but no.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure we're gonna get corrected by like 19 people on the Facebook page, but
no, it was more baggy sweat, baggy hoodie, and I had chains on.
Exactly.
I'll be honest.
Like, chest hair coming out, but no undershirt, just straight rocking it.
I'll be honest. That's kind of one of my hidden dreams, but
I mean, if anybody could pull it off, I feel like it's you.
Yeah. 60-year-old rapper. I was thinking, every once in a while I think about doing an Instagram channel of that, But
dude, I would get back on Instagram for that. If that's the way that you're going, you hit me up because I will get back on Instagram for that right there. That'd be by following 0 followers. That would be me. That would be John Malkovich. That's who it was. John Malkovich.
Yeah.
Yep, you're Teddy KGB. That's exactly what I pictured you. As.
I mean,
when you were getting. Hey, it's a good style. Next time you pop in the Facebook group and do one of your videos, you should do that.
Stranger things have happened, man. I mean, you got to do something to get attention in this world.
Hey, God, yeah.
But also be yourself. I mean,
yeah. Well, good luck with that. It seems to be
really
hard
being
enough.
yourself,
But yeah, well, we rapped and we reminisced and we talked about Rounders. But yeah, it's March 13th, the year 2025. Welcome aboard, everybody. You listen to the Crushing Iron podcast. And this is episode 838.
Yes, it is, and just in time. There's ice is melting on the lake, so
I was going to ask you how things are. Is it melting? I know it's very warm here this week. I mean, I think it's supposed to be 80 today. And I remember you saying before, like earlier, like it was the earliest you had seen the lake freeze over. Is it now thawing out at record rate?
Yeah, I would say that most of it's thawed, and except there's a huge chunk right in front of the house that's just blocking me from access to the rest of it. So, but there's enough for plunging, so that's all good for now.
That's all good.
But I think, today, tomorrow, it's going to be. I think by the weekend, it's clean. But that's good because that fits right into the topic today. It'll open up for me. I should be able to go swimming by Sunday.
What is
30?
Before we get I'm going to launch into swimming here in a minute. It's been a while, and we're all due for a good rant. But before we go into that, so we know like a good plunge temp. How different is your plunge temp from your acceptable open water swim temp?
It's about 40 degrees.
40 degrees. Optimal plunge temp 40. Optimal water swim 80. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I just did a little beach walk barefoot. I mean, it was 50 degrees out in the sand, and I'm walking barefoot because I'm like, it was a little chilly, but came back, plunged. It's probably, I bet it's in the mid to upper 30s right now. I just walked right in. That felt great. But to think about swimming is a whole different animal for me. You got your head in there, and then you actually got to, move your arms.
Yeah, it's a whole different beast.
You got to actually exert energy.
But it's a good topic because then, like, you got these early season. We're going to talk about swimming and pool swimming, open water swimming for a little bit today. But like you actually, as kind of usual, as we've done like for the last 8 years, you kind of launched into one of the actual like pieces of swim info. What I talk about today was head position, and I'll get that in a minute. But you have these early season races like Texas 70.3 is an early season race. The water is never that cold, but you got two races that come to mind right off the bat. Oceanside 70.3, where the water can be fairly cool, and then St. George. Both those have the, like, Oceanside not as much as St. George. St. George could be high 50s. And then Oceanside obviously can be 60s to low 60s. To me, that's pretty perfect when it comes to open water swim temp. Now, low 60s, high 50s, that's a little bit chilly. Yeah. But what you're kind of saying about putting your face in, like, I was thinking about this earlier this week working with a swimmer, and we talking about head position. And I think one of the things that, again, we'll make this kind of a shorter cast. Hopefully you can listen on your way to the pool. But, when we talk about swimming, we always kind of start with breathing, right? If you can't breathe right, then you're not going to swim correctly. You're going to get out of breath quickly. I think breathing is one of the most practiced things in all swimming when it comes to people want to get faster, people want to have better technique, and I get that. I'm all for it when it comes to efficiency, but being able to breathe efficiently is the most important thing. So we always like to start with breathing, right? At our camps, we teach people how to exhale appropriately, make sure you're getting all the oxygen out, what it's actually really like to exhale fully, and that way you can take a full breath. And then even on deck, and you see this too at our swim camps and triathlon camps, like, you can visibly see someone holding their breath. You can see them not blowing any bubbles, and they go to take a breath. They probably over rotate and they check the weather, like looking at the sky, and you can see them exhaling and inhaling with their face out of the water. Like, they just don't know how to get deep breaths through their diaphragm and take in a breath and then exhale in the water, and the timing of that, and then to take a breath, right? So that's always like kind of the first place start is how you breathe. And if you're a swimmer that just gets in the water and has trouble, because I really do think, and when a lot of swimmers talk about only having one pace, I generally think it's not pace and fitness related. I feel like it's aerobic or anaerobic related based on their ability or inability to get hypoxic quickly. And a lot of times that isn't because you don't have the fitness, right? Like, if I took you out of the water and I put you on the bike, you could go all out for a lot longer. You could go swimming. So you have the lungs, you have the heart, you just don't know how to breathe. Like, you just get gassed so quickly. And yes, it's a different sport. Yes, it's a lot harder in certain ways. It's a full body. But if you don't know how to breathe, you're going to continuously work off a deficit and a bigger deficit and a bigger deficit until finally the deficit is so large that you have to stop and tread water. It's not, to me, it's not largely a fitness thing. But see, when you talk about having one speed in the water, a lot of times it's not about, again, the fitness. It's about your inability to breathe correctly, so you're getting maximum oxygen consumption and then spending as little of it as possible. And on both ends of the spectrum, you've got most athletes who are incredibly inefficient in the water. So they're utilizing as much energy and as much oxygen as possible, moving against how they actually know or don't know how to breathe, and they're working off a deficit. So you're working on maximum output versus minimal input, which is the oxygen that you need required for the output. And then when those finally come to a head, you can't breathe. You get hypoxic, right? And so, again, always start with breathing. If you're a person that doesn't know how to breathe when they swim or feels like they hold their breath, because, again, like, when you look at the best swimmers on the planet, the best swimmers in pro triathlon, the best swimmers, open water swimmers, they look relaxed. None of them look tense. And early season races, open water races, that brings up, tension, stress. You go in the water, very, very, very tense. You'll never see a tense swimmer swim well because they're not fluid, they're not rhythmic, they're not long, they're probably not, high in the water, they're not efficient, they're not breathing correctly. It is a direct recipe for, I'm not going to say disaster, but for a underperforming swim. And then you combine that with cold water, which increases the heart rate. It probably increases your anxiety about getting in, and you don't like putting your face in the water. A lot of swimmers don't like putting their face in the water, period. Doesn't matter at all if the water is warm or if the water is hot. Some athletes just have a really big problem putting their face all the way in the water. And while a lot of times they'll kind of like correlate that to not being able to breathe correctly, what really happens here is horrific body alignment. And if your head is really, really, really high in the water, like you're looking up, your head is up, you're pulling your chest up, you're pulling your chest up, you're pulling your whole upper body up. And if you kind of look at, treat your body like a seesaw, right? So a level seesaw is, obviously perfectly level. Well, as soon as you start to raise one end, which is your chest and your head, raising it out of the water because you don't want to put your head in because it's either too cold or you're not very comfortable in it. Well, then when you raise your chest and your chin up, well, then there goes your legs and your rear end, right? The heaviest part of your body is at the bottom. And now you're dragging that forward. So not only are you not breathing great, but now you're creating a tremendous amount of drag just because you don't want to put your face completely in the water. And that is one of the most common things I see from people who, frequently complain about not being able to translate pool times to open water times. And yes, there's a lot of things that go into that, whether it's flip turns, whether it's how much you kick, whether it's wetsuit versus non-wetsuit, whether it's your stroke rate, all different things. But one of the most common things that we see is just difference in head position, right? Because you're either one, you're not putting your face in the water enough and your head position is poor. It's way, way, way too high, right? And that also causes you not to press your chest down. So your body position now is very, very terrible. And now you're swimming. And then also you feel like you have to sight every other stroke, which you don't, not if you know how to swim straight. So you're sighting. In order to sight, you want to keep your head even higher. So now you're just dragging your body through the water. And then the other piece of that, which we see a lot, and I think you and I both, we've been hearing about this with athletes for, I think honestly since the first, well, that was more of a neck issue with Jim the very first year we did Wisconsin, but you see a lot of athletes struggle with lower back pain coming out of the swim, wetsuit swims specifically, and they have this lower back pain on the bike. And my theory on that is that comes from poor body positioning in the water. And yes, you have a wetsuit to help bring your legs up. But what happens is if you have bad body positioning in general, you don't know how to engage your core, you don't know how to engage your lower back, and you also don't know how to push your chest down. What happens is if those legs stay up, right, and you're always going to be high in the water because they have the added buoyancy of the wetsuit on the front end of your stroke. If you're again raising your head too high, one, because you feel like you have to sight every stroke or you don't want to put your head in the water, if you kind of look at that, you make more of like a U than you do a flat line, right? Legs are up high, head is up high, your lower back is lower, and you're putting all this extra strain on it. Well, that's another reason why you should work on your alignment, right? Your 3 H's, your head, your hips, and your heels, always towards the top of the water. And if you don't have those, and you think about just having your head and your heels at the water and your hip is dragging, when you sight, especially when you oversight, which is every maybe 2 to 4 strokes if you're a person that swims crooked, and your alignment is terrible because your head and your chest is up so high, no wonder you're going to have lower back issues, either on regular swims in the pool or on swimming in open water when you actually have a wetsuit. And then you're like, oh, well, maybe that's not a big of a deal. But so if you're a person that has lower back issues coming out of the swim, and obviously you probably don't recognize them on the swim, you recognize them on the bike, right? You're in aero position for a long period of time, and now you're having lower back issues. I think that's a cause and effect. And so when you think about, again, like all the things that starting with the breathing, right? And comfort of face in the water. Like, again, these are like, everyone's talking about early vertical forearm and using fins and using snorkels and these kind of paddles and what kind of buoy do you use and what kind of sets are you doing? Are you doing threshold? Are you doing long intervals? I don't want to go to the pool too much. What am I doing here? Like, yes, something is super technical. We know it takes the most amount of time to get to the pool, to get in your session and come home. We know that, right? But when it comes to it's the biggest effect it has on I believe it has the biggest effect on the rest of your race, whether you're prepared for it or not. And it does start with things as simple as, do you know how to breathe, right? Do you know how to exhale and inhale? It's not you're not a one-speed pony, right? You're fit enough to have multiple speeds. So, or you're just not breathing correctly. So take some time to learn how to breathe correctly. Like, and that could be something as simple as doing, some hypoxic sets, like teaching your body, forcing your body to learn how to breathe correctly, hold oxygen, get rid of it, and get a big inhale, and then fill your lungs back up. That could be something like doing simple like hundreds, right? Where you're doing the first 100s or first 25 is breathe every stroke, second 25 is breathe every 3, third 25 is breathe every 5, last 25 coming home, breathe every 7. That usually means your oxygen is depleting, and you're probably going to get 2, maybe max 3 breaths on your fourth, but then you rest. Right? Give yourself a 20, 25, maybe even 30-second rest, max rest here, but do some hypoxic sets that really work on teaching yourself how to breathe. If you want to use pool buoy and paddles, that's great. We're not working on stroke here, but take the time to do that. Yeah. And by using like a paddle and buoys, it also slows your stroke rate down and slows your heart rate down some anyway.
Yeah.
And allows you the ability to do these things. So, I mean, you have to start at the front. Most people know, oh, what about my kick? Or what about my forearm? Like, where am I doing this? But if you don't start with your breathing and then with your alignment, you're really going to have to overcorrect those later, and you're going to be working harder to get better results than just working more efficiently and being faster out of the gate.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a couple thoughts on that and a question for you. We've heard of Tony Robbins, right? The motivation guy. Mm-hmm. I was recently listening to something. He does this thing called priming, where he kind of changes the state of his mind or whatever like that. And he said something really interesting that I think really might apply here in a weird way. He said, we've kind of got this ancestral history, that's baked into our body and DNA over the thousands of years, and it's basically survival instinct. And we have enough of that, as far as anxiety, like we wake up and we just need to just survive, and it's kind of this flight or fight kind of thing. And his point of that is we don't need to feed that. And I just thought that was really interesting. He says you wake up with enough of that shit. And the minute you give that more power, it's going to take over. So that's why I always think about, and I didn't know why necessarily, but I always think about swimming for me anyway, is one of my biggest goals is just to really get relaxed. And, I start thinking about, let's say, because like you're saying, people don't like putting their head in the water. And to me, that means they're kind of like cheating their chin up, and they're thinking about breath more. They're not being able to relax and exhale under the water as cleanly as they should, maybe. And so naturally, you're going to have that head kind of tilting up, which, causes your hips to go down, like you're saying, and the heels and that sort of thing. But I wonder a lot of times, I think, there's been times where I just really almost try to maybe overcorrect that feeling, because, if you're, and I've talked about before with you, and I think you said it was exactly right. You want to create sort of that swimming downhill feel. And for me, that's a subtle little thing that I think that if I think my head is level, it's still creeping up a little bit. But if I have this kind of faith and relaxation piece where I feel like I'm actually swimming downhill, where my head is actually in the water and flat and not popping up as much as I think it is, that's the feeling I want. But I have to create a comfort with that, right? Because it's almost like letting go a little bit. You're kind of just giving yourself over to the water. I mean, I have kind of that typical sort of curved neck thing that kind of pops up. Sometimes I wonder if I need traction to get my spine aligned, but it's one of these things where I try to think about, like Robbins would say, you really need to create kind of a positive vibe in yourself, through this priming process. And to me, it makes sense in swimming. It's sort of like you have to be, like almost over relaxed in a way. Can you get to that place where you're not trying to think about breath all the time and just relax and create that. So I just, this downhill swimming kind of mindset, or at least feeling, right? And sometimes even if it may not be, your head's deep in the water, but you might feel it. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes if you're used to kind of swim with your neck up, if you put it down in the right position, it might feel weird. So I think a lot of times for me, that's kind of the mental juxtaposition that I have to create, and almost like in a mental way, sort of overcorrect for my natural tendency. Does that even resonate with you?
No,
you're
no,
so
for
used to
sure.
it.
I mean, it's because for most people, this is, just like with standing up tall, like when usually I'll get a swimmer out of the water and I'll say, or just stand still, and I'll say, drop your, I'll say, look at the ceiling and then look at your toes. And and those things alone adjust your spine, right? Like the way that's curved or curved one way or the other. And like those small little things are huge adjustments, right? And so when you, and a lot of, and it's not, unfortunately, it's not the right word, is, like when you, in swimming, we talk about like head position in general. And yeah, first off, let me go back real quick. Is like when you talked about being relaxed, like to me, that's the number one thing. Like you cannot, I don't think you can feel the water if you're not relaxed. And I think that like a lot of people just get in the water and just swim to swim, and they swim very, 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 very stiff, right? I also think it's impossible to create levers with your arms, which how you're supposed to swim if you're stiff. So for example, like a stiff swimmer never bends their arm. They use their arm from shoulder to wrist as one lever. Never bends, no early curve. They're too stiff. Their shoulders are too stiff. They have no reach. Whereas a great relaxed swimmer that gets early vertical form has two levers. Sometimes if you want to be, has three levers. You got your shoulder to your elbow, which is a lever. You got your elbow to your wrist, which is a lever. And you got your wrist to your fingertip, which is another lever. When you're really, really relaxed and you can feel all three of those, you're going to have the best catch and the best mechanics, because your hand should move independently of your forearm, right? So then you go moving your way up, so like wrist to elbow, and that should move independently of what your elbow to your shoulder is doing. Three levers. And if you're not relaxed, you don't have three levers. You've got one. So you're not getting any. You can see how stiff people move, and they also have no reach in their shoulders. Their shoulders don't reach at all. They don't move them forward at all to extend. They don't move them back. They don't rotate, interior or exterior. Like they don't do anything. They're just super stiff, right? They're fighting the water. Same goes with breathing. If you're not relaxed, you're not going to breathe right. And so that's just like when relaxing is just so key. And I think there's a lot of great ways to make yourself relaxed when you get in the water. And if you're a person that swims very, very, very stiff, the number one thing you should be working out is, how can I get relaxed? How can I relax myself in the water? Right? You look at the best cyclists, they look fluid. They look like they're part of their bike. You look at the best runners, they look like efficient and they're flexible. They don't look stiff. Right? They're not running, very, very stiff. They're just flowing. They look very relaxed. The tenser you are, the worse you're going to be. And that goes from so again, kind of what I said at the outset, like the tenser you are, the less efficient you're going to be, and the less oxygen you're going to get, because you're also stressed about your breathing. And that's why it's so hard for people to swim correctly. And yes, there's a lot of ways you can correct that, but it takes kind of slowing down, understanding, yes, like the more relaxed I am, the better. And so you can, this is just the head we're talking about here. We haven't gone down like the hips and the heels. But it's like when you talk about like the head position, you can tuck your chin, you can look your eyes straight down, or you can look your eyes out a little bit, like 45, 50 degrees. Like that's typically a good head position. Most people will just look straight up. And then again, you have like this really bent neck. And then the other fear, which is what you said, and you nailed it, is, and I oftentimes ask swimmers this to make them like think about it, is like, do you have your face so close to the surface so you can get to breathe quicker? So like you want your head closer to the surface, so if you get panicky, then you can breathe. And they're like, yeah, maybe not consciously, but now that you mention it, yeah, I'm probably doing it subconsciously. Like I'm closer to the surface, I'm close to where I can breathe. Then what happens is, and they take a breath, if they feel like that and they already have bad alignment and they already are inefficient at breathing, then you're already taking an athlete or a swimmer with poor body positioning, poor alignment that's already sinking in the water, and then they're breathing in a manner that is probably raising their entire face out of the water and then rolling over more towards on your back than staying face down. And then so you're creating even worse body position. And then you're getting a less than optimal breath because you probably didn't exhale correctly and you're probably not going to inhale correctly. And then you are going back in. It's inefficiency plus inefficiency at its finest. Inefficient breathing, inefficient stroke, inefficient body positioning equals inefficient swimming equals I have one speed. That's it. And again, like it's not about having one speed. It'd be like me taking, a really good runner out on the road and just saying, all right, hey, I know you got, 5 different zones you can run in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to tape your nose shut except for one nostril, and I'm going to take duct tape and I'm going to wrap it around your mouth. They wouldn't have much different speed either because you can't breathe enough to get enough oxygen to have more than like a slight range, right? But if you have the ability to go out in your zone 2 and breathe very, very chill in and out of your nose, right? And then you speed up a little bit, then you're breathing still mostly out of your nose, but it takes a lot more control. Then you're in high zone 2, low zone 3, then you're probably breathing in and out of your nose and out through your mouth, right? And then you get into, high zone 3, low zone 4, then it's maybe a few, and then you're more out of your mouth. And then zone 5, zone 6, it's mostly out of your mouth. Like that's because you need more and more oxygen. You're working your way up from I need a little bit of oxygen, right? A little bit of aerobic with oxygen to anaerobic without oxygen. Well, most swimmers get in and their body isn't and their physiology isn't straight anaerobic from a fitness level. It's you're just making it anaerobic from a respiratory rate and how you breathe and how you consume or don't consume oxygen, just strictly how you just produce carbon dioxide. That's why you don't have a range. And so and most people complain, over and over again. I'm not getting any faster. Look, I'm like, that's because you don't even know how to breathe. Like you have those ranges, you have that fitness. You just don't know how to breathe. You can't tell me that you can, like I was telling Hayden, which it might be the biggest challenge of my entire life when it comes to teaching somebody how to swim, but he can do a 2-minute hockey shift and go all out the entire time and be fine and come out and rest it again. But doing a 25, he has no idea how to breathe. He's absolutely destroyed. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. He gets those shifts. He's like, I need a breather. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, you're not out of shape, dude. You just don't know how to breathe. You don't know how to consume and get rid of it and then take it again. So that's like when you have athletes say, I'm just not getting any faster, I don't feel like, or I only have one speed. It's not so much about your inability from a fitness standpoint to be able to move through those zones. It's your inability to breathe correctly. And then you don't know how to breathe correctly. And then you start to work on your alignment. Again, these aren't things that are fun for most people. You go to the pool, you want to get there. Hell, all we're going to talk about today is breathing and head. We may pick this up next week, but none of these things are fun for people to work out because they take time and you're not accumulating a lot of yardage to post about or to log into Garmin. Like you're just not. But they're hugely important when it comes to being as efficient as possible with your strokes. I mean, we say this all the time to everyone that'll listen. Swimming is not that sport where the harder you work, it's usually the harder you work, the slower you go. And it doesn't have to be that way. The best swimmers out there look like they're doing it. That's why they call it effort. They look like they're effortless because they're so incredibly efficient and smooth. None of the great swimmers you see look like they're stiff and inefficient. And these are things that you have to work on to, to be, in terms of, breathing. We talked about, good body alignment. Like that's another huge thing we have to, make sure that we're paying attention to. Are we relaxed with our body? Or what can we do to relax our body and make sure that we're feeling things with, all the way from your head to your toes? and not being stiff, whether it's practicing coming off the wall and being fluid and not being super stiff, right? Or is it people who generally are very relaxed and flexible with their body that come off the wall deeper, whether it's on an open turn or a closed turn or just starting their swim off. Most people who don't, they come off like right at the surface and start swimming. Like there's just little things you can do to help practice, whether it's, practicing different movements or different kicks or just working on simple body alignment. Yes, again, is it going to, when you might go to the pool for 45 minutes or an hour and you might only get in 1,200 to 1,400, 1,500 yards because you're practicing, you're doing things slowly, and what you're doing takes time, right? It's like asking, a triathlete to do a 400-yard kick. It might take them 45 minutes versus some of 400 might take them 8.
Yeah.
So it's not, it's not like you're going to accumulate a ton of yardage. And so, yes, there are times where you have to accumulate that yardage and work on your fitness and work on your muscular endurance. But there's also like a point to where when we recognize that swimming is that piece that requires the most attention to detail when it comes to technique, but you also get the biggest return on investment from small tweaks, then you should be okay with that, because then it's going to make your life a lot easier when you do swimming, because it's going to become easier. You're going to be able to accumulate more yardage in the same amount of time because now it's efficient and it's easier. And so there's just two things right there off the bat that I think you should be working on, especially if you still have a race that's a good bit away, is to check in with those things. Am I breathing right? How is my alignment? Are my heels to the surface? Are my hips to the surface? Is my head at the surface? And if one of those three isn't, then you're in bad shape. And if two of those three aren't, which is 80% of most triathletes, then you're really, really inefficient. I mean, you are working against your entire, surface area of your body, pretty much trying to drag it through water. And there's nothing it'd be like me, like, hey, Mike, I see you climbing up the hill and you're pretty efficient, but let me put a 40-pound vest on you and you can bike up the hill. Like you're gonna be like, no, this is way too hard. But that's the amount of drag you're carrying through the water. You'd be like, oh, I want watts per kilogram. I'm going to improve that right away. You'll spend time to do that, but you won't spend the time to make it more efficient when you swim with the biggest return on investment. And then you wonder why there's this gigantic cascade effect, not just from, a muscular endurance standpoint, but from an energy expenditure. We're calculating that from the start of your race to the end. I would argue that people waste the most energy per what they spend in the swim versus any other part of the race, right? Because cycling, you're on a fixed pedal, right? 180 degrees, you can't really fuck that up, right? So it's the efficiency there is about aerodynamics. And you got people who are willing to spend, $2,000 on custom 3D printed aero bars, but then you look at them, they swim like shit, and it takes them 59 minutes to get out of the water, and they're zone 4 the whole time. And they don't want to spend extra time doing it. And then the running is the one just below swimming when it comes to just, economy and efficiency. What's the energy it required at a certain pace, and then how long you can hold it. And so when it comes to so if you think about it, the one where you're losing the most energy versus the energy cost you're putting in, your worst return on investment is the first thing that you're doing. The first thing in a race that's all about energy expenditure and all about how efficient you can be and all about conserving energy and conserving calories, and you're starting with the race that way, that's going to take you no wonder you're walking on the run. No wonder your lower back hurts. No wonder at mile 70 of the bike you're out of it. No wonder you can't keep up with calories. These are things that people just start off with on the bike and only think about the bike or only think about on the run. It starts from the time you dip your toe in the water. Or you start off the race too fast and you go zone 4 the first 200 meters and you got to slow, and then you have to stop and tread water. You're immediately, again, and we shouldn't even call it about energy expenditure or calories and how much you're having to burn and then replace the course of the day. Let's just call it stress. You're going through a day that's already going to put an enormous amount of physiological stress on your body from just the simple, even like a 70.3 or Olympic, right? Just from the duration plus intensity equals the stress on your body, right? Really, 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 shorter duration, but very high intensity for an Olympic. But then you got 70.3, which is pretty solid from a duration, and then pretty solid from an intensity, which equals a certain amount of stress. And then Ironman, obviously the highest duration, least amount of intensity for most people, but still the duration trumps that. So there's a lot of stress there. And you hop in the swim and you talk about duration plus intensity. Again, going same thing from an energy output and what you're getting as a gain. Like if you look at people's swim, I guarantee you, from a stress standpoint, it is the highest stress per minute of all of them. And it's the shortest. And that's the one you're starting with, right? So what I mean here is like your hour and a half swim is going to create way more stress than your hour and a half is, your first hour and a half on the bike is, and your first hour and a half on the run is probably going to be, because of how inefficient you are and your inefficient stroke, your inefficient body position, your inefficient breathing is going to burn way more calories and require way more energy, and that's the first hour and a half of your event. And then we wonder why we can't keep up with calories on the bike and we're already fatigued. My legs just didn't have it. I need to bike more. I need to do more threshold work. I need to get a new fit. I got to spend $3,000 on wheels. I need to spend $600 on a helmet. I got to get some more TT bars. I'm just not there. I got to strength train. I got to do this. And or you're falling apart on the run and I got to do more track work. So I'm like, it's funny. Like you see people flying the track and you put them in the pool and they swim like a 4x4 with, rulers attached to it. That's how stiff they are. And they don't even float that well. But I'm like, that's a huge deal when it comes to, again, like just, I don't know, we're probably one of the only squads that puts this much effort into swimming when it comes, but it pays off. And it also doesn't pay off when you ignore it. And I just think, again, like I'll pick this back up on Tuesday, but just those two things, right? Head position and breathing, like you start from there and you'll start to see, even if it's just for a 25 and then for a 50 and doing some hypoxics, like I said, every breath, every 3, every 5, every 7, take a breather. And if you don't know how you breathe, take the time to learn how you breathe or how you don't. Right? And there's certain ways, like at least when I'm on deck working with someone, if I don't see bubbles coming around like the backside of their neck, I know they're not exhaling. They're just holding your breath the entire time and then trying to breathe. You're running out of real estate here. At some point, you're not going to have any real estate to give. So you're going to have to stop and you're going to panic. So just take the time to address these things right now, not just for the season, but for your overall goals and performance in racing.
Yeah.
You got a tambourine back there?
That was a clock, symbol clock. Anyway, just quickly, and we got to wrap this up here, but when you talk about swimming stiff, that just reminds me of like if you're thinking, like I'll get athletes all the time. I was really thinking about my catch today, and I was really concentrating on my pull, and then that final pushback and the whole thing. I always say, good, now quit thinking about it and just swim, because to me, anytime you're thinking, you have that kind of gear cranking shit going on in your mind, whether it's running or cycling or whatever, that's to me is a pause, or it's like a hesitation or something that deletes momentum in the actual process. So I try to get people, all right, you can think about it for a little bit and focus on it and everything, but like at some point after you've swam for 6 years and you're still working on that type of thing, which is fine, I guess, to think, to know about it when you're going in, but you got to at some point just start swimming. And I always tell people, think like you're a swimmer. And I don't think swimmers like you, I mean, I'm sure you could go out, even though you probably are in decent shape now, but like when you're not in good shape, you could probably go out and crank 2,000-3,000 pretty easily, not hard or anything at your best fitness, but you could probably just cruise it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people can do that. So why is that? And to me, it's all about momentum, and it's about efficiency and economy, like you're talking about. So I think what happens is we a guy like me who has trouble with body position really has to work hard at getting really strong and being able to pull that, but if I could just find that, which I can find sometimes when I'm swimming a lot. And I think that's the other thing is you got to put in a lot of yardage, just to be able to get to that point where you can relax and actually swim like a swimmer would think. I think, I'm sure swimmers aren't always like consciously thinking about, okay, there's the wall. I got to, think about getting to the wall. Like some people that don't swim that well probably have that mental thought where you're just kind of, the wall is just there and it's just a part of the deal. You know what I mean? So that overthinking kind of thing is what I think is an obstacle to becoming a better swimmer a lot of times. It's like always thinking about form. I mean, yeah, if you've been swimming 6 years or 5 years in this sport or 2 years or 3, you probably have the basics of the form. Like you're saying, just work on them, think about them, get them set in your head, and then just go do it. And put in practice at just being smooth and creating momentum and letting momentum take over. Because, same thing with like runners that have ran their whole life. They know how to run right. They can go out and run a half marathon without even training. So what is that? It's like not maybe their best or whatever, but my point is that usually if you've been in the sport and you're in fairly decent fitness, you have like quote unquote the strength to kind of pull it together. Now it's all about being able to flow and use momentum. I was thinking about this the other day because I do a lot of push-ups, and when I'm doing push-ups, I can do push-ups like for a long time, but lately I've been trying to just do like 4 or 5 and then pause at the top like a plank, and I get really stiff and that gets really hard. But when I'm actually in the motion of a push-up, you use leverage and you use momentum and the whole 9 yards. Maybe it's not the perfect push-up when I'm pausing or what. You know what I'm saying, though? It's like you create momentum with your body. And I think that anytime you're pausing in the water and thinking about all that shit, that's what hesitates you sometimes. And just that little brief, split second of hesitation on every stroke is what might be destroying your stroke. That's just a theory I wanted to throw in before we left.
No, I mean, I think it was actually reminded me, like, I always think that, like I always try to tell when I give like a few things to look at, even within like one adjustment, is to find what fits within the form.
There you go.
And like, yeah, what that means is it's like, find, even if there's like, swim a few links at this and just focus on what it's supposed to feel like. And regardless of what I'm telling you, something's going to click and you're going to feel something that makes sense to you that you can address or you can hold or that you recognize. Because swimming too is like you just have to feel it. And like, just a quick example before we head out. Like I've been working with some competitive swimmers on their starts, and then I asked myself on Monday, I was like, dude, you haven't done a fucking start off the block in like over a decade. Yes, you can know it all in your head, right? And know it from practice and doing it for forever and give good advice. But unless you're actually like doing it, you probably don't feel exactly what they're feeling. And, so I'm like, man, I better feel this. So I fucking did like 2 or 3 starts off the side. And then I climbed up on the blocks and I'm like, fuck, this is a long way up here. But you can't think about it. Like you've done it for, and so I did then I did a dive and I was like, okay, that was terrible. But I just had to feel like a certain few things are like, okay, this makes sense. This doesn't make sense. And then my last 2, I was like, all right, all I could feel that made sense to me to adjust was this small little thing. And it wasn't the whole entire dive I was trying to correct. It was just my simple start with what my hands were doing. And that was it. Because like you said, you can get paralysis in just trying to fix the whole thing and then you don't move. So it's find one piece of the piece you're working on that makes sense, that clicks, stick with it and do it, but don't ever waste so much time especially on something that doesn't click for you.
Yeah. That's right. Perfect.
Perfect end. That's all we got. We hope that your teams, if you're following basketball, we hope your teams win this weekend, unless they're playing against Wisconsin or Tennessee, then we hope they lose. And hope you have a good weekend. We're getting there. It's slowly becoming race season. As always, love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, man. Go get it.
All right, dude.
All right, bud. See you.